डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Hello viewers, I Ritu Gaur, Assistant Professor of Assistant Professor at Baba Saheb Ambedkar Open University, welcome you all in video lecture series. Terms. When you hear the word term, what comes in your mind? You may think first term. Examination, midterms or annual term, right? So today we are going to discuss about some terms. So in today's lesson we are going to learn about introduction, what is literary term and glimpses of some of the literary terms. So now the question, what is literary term exactly? So you may think about first term examination, midterm or annual term, right? But my dear students, today we are going to discuss terms which is called literary terms, through which you can understand literature more better, which will help you to analyze text critically. So our first term is theatre of absurd. Before knowing more about it, it is very necessary to know who has coined the term theatre of absurd. And the answer is the phrase theatre of absurd was coined by the critic Martin Esslin with the reference of works of dramatists who evoked the absurdity by leaving behind logical form, character. બહુ છે ને આગળ પાછળ થઈ ગયું, ઓલી સ્લાઇડ લેવાની હતી ને પછી મને આવી નહીં તો મને એમ થયું એના પછી ચાલી ગઈ. તો હવે
સ્લાઇડ લેવાની છે ફરીથી લાવી દો.
ઓકે, તો પણ આના માટે સ્ક્રિપ્ટ ઉપર જવું પડશે.
હા હું જવા દો.
ઓકે
ક્યાં સુધી મને ઓકે કહેજો.
ઓકે હા. એમાં ફર્સ્ટ સ્લાઇડ ટર્મ્સ લખ્યું છે ને ત્યાં સુધી ઉપર જવા દો. બસ બસ હા. હવે હવે સ્લાઇડ ઓલી સ્લાઇડ જ લાવવાની છે લિટરરી ટર્મ્સ વાળી.
મેમ જ્યારે અહીંયા જે તમે સ્ક્રિપ્ટ રનિંગ કરો ને ત્યારે પીપીટી જે આવતી હોય ને એ પીપીટી કન્ટિન્યુ જ્યાં નામ આવે ને એ પીપીટી ચેન્જ થાય એ રીતે કરજો.
સમજી નહીં?
અહીંયા તમે જે સ્ક્રિપ્ટ રૂમમાં જે પીપીટી નું નામ તો હશે ને કે આ પીપીટી છે.
હા હા હા.
એ પ્રમાણે ચેન્જ કરવાનું.
ઓકે હા.
તો પીપીટી અત્યારે લાવી દઉં ને.
હા ત્યારે પીપીટી લાવ.
કન્ટિન્યુ.
Term or terminology means vocabulary related to a certain field of study, profession, or activity. It is a system of words used to name things in a particular discipline. One is able to work comfortably in a given profession if knows the terms used within the profession. Similarly, it is important to know some of the basic terms and expressions used to discuss and analyze literature. Literary terms means the technique, style, and formatting used by literary writers to highlight, elaborate, or strengthen composition. For example, every story has a theme, setting, conflict, and it is written from a particular point of view. So now, being a student of literature, you are very much aware what is term, and if someone is say, oh, is there catharsis, it is conflict, so you know what does it conflict means in the particular context. For example, in the medical term, there is a term like practices, that how many years you have experienced these practices. When it comes to teaching profession, that they called experience. So these terms differ from the field. Okay, so now we are going to learn about the first literary term, and that is called literary terms. And so our first term is theatre of absurd. So, theatre of absurd, before knowing more about it, it is very necessary to know who has coined the term theatre of absurd. And the answer is, the phrase theatre of the absurd was coined by the critic Martin Aslin, with the reference of works of dramatists who evoke the absurdity by leaving behind logical form, character and dialogue together with realistic illusion, that of the 1950s. And you must jot down this point, because this has been asked many times in NET and SET examination as well. So, theatre of absurd, the movement began in 1915 and continued till 1980. So, it was Samuel Beckett's death in 1989 marks the close of this movement. So, it was a movement spread across American and lot of European countries during 1950 and 1960. What is surprising about theatre of absurd is that this movement is closely linked to another literary movement known as surrealism. Now you must be wondering, what is surrealism? Surrealism is a movement that came up after World War I as a reaction, and it was a literary movement where we find a lot of dream sequences. So this nightmare dream would be coming up in dreams is work of surrealism, where our unconscious mind and the images pop up. Another important thing is that theatre of absurd is inspired by work of Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus, that was an essay written by him in 1942. So this is the picture of Myth of Sisyphus. Now you can see that he gives the philosophy absurd. What is absurd? Where he says man is on a quest to understand his life, and this quest is having no meaning. So the man quest for existence to derive meaning is futile. It does not have any meaning. It is also interesting because it portrays the Greek mythological character named Sisyphus. Now this character is condemned to an existence of rolling a ball to the top of the mountain, and the ball is going to come. You can see in the picture that he is trying to pulling that ball, but in the end that comes later. So what is the meaning of doing all these things? Even in our life, when we feel like we don't find any meaning, why am I doing? For what? So if we don't find any reason to do it and we think it is absurd, no point, meaningless. So this term is applied to the works of literature, mostly dramas and other prose, that depicts human condition, essentially being meaningless, absurd. Albert Camus, where he writes, in a universe that is suddenly deprived of illusions and of light, man feels a stranger. His is an irremediable exile. This divorce between man and his life, the actor and his setting, truly constitutes the feeling of absurdity. Thus, it is derived from existentialism of Albert Camus. It represents purposelessness in a universe without meaning or value, as a rebellion against basic belief and value in traditional culture and literature. The absurd movement emerged in the France after the tragic and horror of the World War. In absurd of theatre, literature generally faces alarmingly incomprehensible predicaments. The picture that I have shown to you, this is about the play that is Waiting for Godot. They both are waiting that every day, again the same routine, that Godot will come, but no, nothing happened. So this is the picture of that drama. You must read it and to know more about theatre of absurdity. Nothing will happen. Still have that hope and still no meaningless, that purposelessness that is the center of this. Okay, now now the second is the aestheticism. The word is derived from the Greek, which means sensitive. હવે ફૂલ વ્યૂ આપી દો એમ વાંધો. The word is derived from the Greek, which means sensitive, perspective, and sentient. The term represents the doctrine that regards beauty as an end or final destination in itself. It is a branch of philosophy dealing with the nature of art, beauty, and taste. It applies not a literary movement of the second half of the 19th century, leading to the belief in art for art's sake. Immanuel Kant and other German philosophers separated the sense of beauty from practical interest in support of aestheticism. Aestheticism was adopted in France by Baudelaire, Flaubert, and in England by Walter Pater, Oscar Wilde, and several poets of the 1890s under the slogan of art for art's sake. This is a very important thing because they believed that art is only for art's sake, not the preaching, not the you have to learn something from that. No, that is not important. Oscar Wilde was the leader of aestheticism. It attempts to preserve the arts from didactic or political purpose. Burnett Newman says, aesthetic is for the artist as ornithology is for birds. So now let's discuss these things with the Immanuel Kant's quote that happiness So these are the picture of both Oscar Wilde and Immanuel Kant, and you must read it. It will really interesting whatever the quote they have said and their preaching and their things, their philosophy regarding aestheticism. Now we will discuss this quote that happiness is not an ideal of reason but of imagination. So here what he is trying to convey is that within his ethics, full view. Within his ethics, the German philosopher touched on the persisting theme of the search for happiness. What is happiness actually? Which has title to do with the average advice in the 21st century. There is no metaphysical authority that tells us how to be happy. In fact, until relatively recently, happiness was accepted as something that comes and goes throughout life, and not as a possible perpetual state under the microscope of academics, scientists, and self-help books, and neither as something that can be conjured up with a formula and achieved by design. But it is always enjoyable to read about happiness, right? To consider what neuroscience or spiritual leader, writers, or philosophers have to say about it. We need to clear the modern desk, however, and make space for the old, rediscover those philosophical tracks that have little to do with the average 21st century advice and which have survived due to their strength, the passage of time. In his groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, 1795, the great 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote a notable epistemological irony regarding happiness, which played a role in his ethics. In a non-technical way, unlike the context today, the philosopher defines happiness as obtaining what one wants, not as pleasure. So there is difference, but simply as a state in which everything is in accordance with our will and desire. However, according to Kant, happiness is an inherent problem. That is a concept that is too indeterminate. While every human being wishes to attain it, he can never say determinedly and in a way that is harmonious with himself what the really wishes and wills. That of course completes the enigma that human beings are not capable of determining with complete certainty in accordance with any principle. What will make him truly happy? Because omniscience would be required for that. So this is just an idea how deep this philosophical idea is from this unit, that from the unit 13 we are discussing that how literature allows you to this freedom to interpret meaning in your own way. So while discussing all these things, maybe you have your own idea, and literature gives you the freedom that no interpretation can tell you that this is it. No, this is the freedom. This is a literature. You have your own ideas, and everyone has individual truth as well. So this is all about aesthetic and aesthetic philosophy. Immanuel Kant, Oscar Wilde, art for art's sake, not for teaching, not preaching. In the slide you have in the last slide you might have observed that these pictures, that painting, they had their own sense of things. If you find out what this painting want to convey, no, you will not able to find it. So it is art for art's sake, not for life's sake. Art for life's sake means where you can gain the meaning for life, for understanding, for relief. But here art for art's sake means only focuses on that. So this about aestheticism. Now we are going to learn about the third term, that is analogy. So what is analogy? Analogy is a literary device often used in literature and poetry to make a connection between familiar and unfamiliar things, which suggest a deeper significance or create imaginary in the reader's mind. Full view there. So here the comparison typically on the basis of their structure and for the purpose of explanation and clarification. It is an allegory between the workings of nature and those of human society. It is also the process of arguing from the one point of view of similarity. For example, let's discuss this whole analogy topic let's discuss this analogy topic with more pictorial illustration. Have a slide. So here you can see that memory is to love what the saucer is to the cup. So what this deeper significance or create imagery in the reader's mind. So what comes into your mind? That of course you have seen that coffee in the CCD as well. So this analogy compares the relationship between a cup and a saucer to that of love and memory. So memory holds to the love and saucer holds to the cup. So how they are trying to make a thread between them from memory and love and the saucer and the cup. So this is called analogy, that comparison that I have highlighted, that connection between familiar and unfamiliar. You are very much familiar with the saucer and cup, but the connection with the memory and love, so they are trying to connect it, and that is called analogy. Another example is from Romeo and Juliet. I know, being a literature student, of course, everyone knows when it comes to love, everyone know about Romeo and Juliet. But here, interesting fact. People used to think that Romeo is a great lover. But no, find out. Romeo was not a great lover of Juliet. Even before Juliet, he also fell in love with some other girl. Who was she? Why? What happened? And for that, you have to do some research, and it is available on the Google as well. So now again comes to the analogy. So what here I am trying to make you familiarize with it. This is a quote from Romeo and Juliet. This is a very famous, "Naam mein kya rakha hai?" So that Romeo is trying to tell the Juliet. So this first one where there is a rose, there it is a actual dialogue from the drama. "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet, so Romeo would. Were he not Romeo called?" So what is the translation is, what does a name mean? The thing we call a rose would smell just as sweet if we called it by any other name. Romeo would be just as perfect even he wasn't called Romeo. So there is nothing in a name. That is here. Now what is analogy? What is the comparison? So this analogy is likening Romeo to the freshness and sweetness of a rose. So here this is an analogy of literature, and it is very famous, and the dialogue as well, that Romeo thinks about himself that it's okay if you don't call me a Romeo, because even a rose, if you can't say a rose to a rose, but still it smells the same. And the same thing happened with the name. Analogy enables a writer to make a quick comparison between two things and identify a common thread between them. The goal is for the reader to understand the relationship without a lengthy explanation. Here are some of the finest examples in literature. We already have seen the drama. Okay, so what about poetry? How they are using analogies in poetry. That helps the writer to paint a vivid picture in the reader's mind while adding a deeper layer of significance. The idea is to get a notion to resonate and move a reader's heart. Now, that it is very important that from the unit 13 we are discussing that something should happen within whenever we are reading, that reader's heart, that is very important. So here are some of the few example of this. ના સ્લાઇડ જ રાખજો. Here are a few examples from some amazing poets. So this is from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The day is done, and the darkness falls from the wings of night, as a feather is waterfall downward from an eagle in his flight. The day is done. This analogy likens the closing of a day to a feather during softly from an eagle's wing. So how they are comparing that, how darkness falls, that have you observed that when then evening to a night, so how the things happened. The same with eagle in his flight, that how gladly and very graciously that eagle has done these things. So this is analogy between two. This is also another example from Emily Dickinson. There is no frigate like a book. Whenever it comes from a book, no, that book has a power. And of course, being literature student, we always had this desire that of course books, the smell of books and go into the library. We love books, right? So what is the power of book? So what is the power of book? If we can write the whole paragraph and everything, that even not touches our heart. But when it comes to the analogy, it can. So let's read it. There is no frigate like a book to take us lands away, nor any cursors like a pages of prancing poetry. There is traverse may be the poorest stake, without oppress of toll. How frugal is the chariot that bears a human soul. This analogy is saying that nothing on this earth can move a human soul more effectively than a book. Not even a powerful warship, that is called frigate. So warship, that frigate has a power to move each and everything, but no, there is a word that poorest stake without toll. So there is no toll, nothing, and still we can move, we can go around the world, any corner, even the pandemic situation like corona, we can go anywhere through the book, through the word. So this things is wonderfully portrayed here and with this analogy. મિનિટ થઈ ગઈ છે?
હજુ 3 મિનિટ બાકી.
હા, તો પછી એન્ડ જ લઈ લો એમ.
એવું છે?
હા, એમ.
હજુ તો 25 મિનિટ નથી થઈ પણ.
એવું છે? 25 મિનિટ? તમે કીધું 3 મિનિટ બાકી છે.
હા, તો 3 મિનિટ 25 માં 3 બાકી.
હા, તો એન્ડિંગમાં લઈ લો ને કે આજે શું શું ડિસ્કસ કર્યું એમ.
તો તમે એક ભાગ કન્ટિન્યુ કરો, એક એવું વસ્તુ બોલો કે આ વસ્તુ જોયું ને
હા, એ
રિપીટ કરો.
ઓકે.
ત્યાં સુધી થઈ જશે. પણ આ વચ્ચે કટ પડશે એટલે પાછું હતું ને એવું ને
તો હજી એક લઈ લઉં એમ કહો છો ને? હા, ભલે લઈ લઉં. ચાલો,
કન્ટિન્યુ.
Now, archetype. What is archetype? So, definition of archetype as a literary device. An archetype is a recurring symbol or motif throughout literature that represent universal patterns of human nature. It can also refer to the original model on which all other things of the same kind of based. For example, the common character of a hero is an archetype. in that all heroes in literature share some key traits. So that is archetype, that if there is some hero, he must be good, kind, and some kind of trait that be similar, and that is called archetype. We can also certain famous heroes such as King Arthur and Louis Skywalker. So they are called. So there is a huge list of character types, symbols, and situations that are considered archetypes. Here are some of example of archetypes from the real life. When it comes to hero, what is hero? So he must have some kind of archetypes, attribute. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, why they called hero? So we have our own definition. We consider them as hero because of their doings, their deeds, what they have done for nation. So that's why hero. Second is rebel. So William Wallace and this Guevara. Ruler, Napoleon and Genghis Khan. So Napoleon, he was a ruler, and how he has done, and that history of Napoleon, we are very much aware of that. So they have the traits of ruler. Healer, and Mother Teresa, Florence Nightingale. So Mother Teresa served people even at that situation. So that's why the mother is that. So that's why we called mother. So that is healer. What is healer? That heal us from the any wounds, any pain that we have. So they are called healer. Adventurer, Christopher Columbus, Marco Polo, or they have done adventure in their life. Innocent, that is Anne Frank. મને હટાવી લેજો ને તો એન ફ્રેન્કનો ફોટો દેખાય. Innocent Anne Frank. If you can see, there is a third photograph, that is Anne Frank. She is very much famous for his diary. She is very much famous for her diary, Anne Frank's diary. I really suggest you that even if you like reading or not, but you must read it. Anne Frank's diary is really heart touching. That very young girl, you can see that, and how she has faced that Napoleon and that Nazi things and the camp, and how mentally how she has suffered in that era, and very beautifully she portrayed all these things. Malala Yousafzai, that you are very much aware. When it comes to genius, there is Albert Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci, that we know that why they are called genius. But here I would also like to tell you that Albert Einstein, his famous quote that, "I'm thankful to all those who said no to me. Because of them, I did it myself." So they are Albert Einstein, in the very childhood, he has suffered a lot. People considered him as a fool, even worse than fool. They never expect that Albert Einstein can get this much success. So these are the archetypes. So these are called archetypes. Okay. હવે એન્ડિંગ કરું ને. So in today's lesson, we have discussed some of the literary terms, theatre of absurd, analogy, and the third one was, In today's lecture, we have discussed literary terms, and I'm very sure that you must have enjoyed it with the examples, and of course it will inspire you to read much more about it, and you can analyze literature very wonderfully. In next session, we are going to learn about some of the more literary terms from the unit 15. Thank you.